Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where we talk about all things movies. Welcome especially if you're new. If you enjoy talking about movies as much as me, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my reviews. I post usually 2 or 3 per week, as that's about as many movies as I see. But yeah, with that, let's jump on into this review. This is a review for Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I just got back from seeing at the theater. So this movie is about Sonic, and it's when the manic Dr. Robotnik returns to Earth with a new ally, Knuckles the Echidna. Sonic and his new friend Tails is all that stands in their way. So my background going into this movie is that I saw the first movie a few months ago. I think it might have been in January. But yeah, this was I'm not sure why I didn't really get around to seeing the movie when it released in theaters, at least the original a couple of years ago. I I mean, I'm aware of Sonic. I don't know that I've played an actual Sonic game. We were definitely more Nintendo as opposed to Sega growing up. But, we had like a Sonic pinball machine growing up, and I think I played maybe parts or levels of the games here and there, but definitely not as much as say something like Mario. But he's a pretty popular character, but for whatever reason I didn't get around to seeing the original until a few months ago. But I didn't really care for that movie. I thought it was pretty boring for me personally, and was definitely solidly in the meh category. I don't know that I'd have any interest to see that movie again. So that definitely shaped my interest going into this movie. I really wasn't expecting much. The trailers looked kind of what you'd expect for a sequel to the original movie, just maybe a little bit further expanded out with the introduction of Knuckles and Tails. But yeah, so I was not really interested to see this, but I figured I'd give it a shot and see if it managed to kind of stick to the same level as the original, or maybe somehow be better. So with that, let's dive into my thoughts on the movie. And so first up, the things that I liked about the film, I did enjoy the score. It's done by Tom Holkenborg. He's done some of my favorite stuff in the last, say, like 5 years. I think he's kind of up there now with Hans Zimmer and Ramin Djawadi as far as one of the composers that I like, and that's at the kind of the top of my list of my favorite composers. So that was that was nice to see that they got him to do the music. Definitely gonna check out the soundtrack on its own. I did think that the story was good for a kids film. It's obviously not going to be anything like, say, Everything Everywhere All at Once that I saw yesterday. Like it's not trying to be that. So I think for what it was going for, I thought they did a good enough job on the story. But I mean, yeah, take that with a grain of salt. That just means that what they're aiming for and their target audience really isn't necessarily for me. I think they're definitely aiming for it to be a kids film and not necessarily a family film. And I would differentiate between the two by saying, like, a kids film I think is geared just towards kids and younger audiences, where adults really aren't going to be all that entertained, whereas a family film I would say is one that can entertain both adults and kids. And that's usually where a lot of like Pixar films fall. So I'd say something like Encanto from last year, that definitely is in the family movie category. But I'd put Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in the kids movie category. So that's what you're gonna like. If that's what you're expecting and that seems like it's what you want in the movie, then it'll probably be for you. But the story definitely sticks to that scope, although I will say it does kind of go a bit bigger than the first one. The first one felt a little bit more self-contained, or I mean, this one feels just a little bit more adventurous and more epic without kind of getting into spoilers. I think it definitely benefited from bringing in Knuckles and Tails, and I think Knuckles is the standout character of the bunch. And then I would say there are, yeah, again, without going into spoilers, there are some cool surprises, especially if you are familiar with the character and the games and that sort of thing. So I thought there was more of that in this movie than the first one that just made it kind of better overall. And then lastly, I think, yeah, the parts that make it, or like there's some scenes, they're mainly flashbacks I think, but that don't take place on Earth, and I honestly thought those felt a lot more interesting than kind of the storyline that we've got going on Earth. Like I think the humans that get involved in the story and all of those aspects that they bring with it are honestly the least interesting part of the story. So I think it would, I don't see them going this direction, but I think it would be a lot more interesting of a film if they just had it take place on other planets and was not so like integrated with all these humans and on Earth. But I don't know. That's just, I think, a minor critique. But with that, that kind of exhausts the list of the things that I liked about the film. So we'll jump into the things I didn't care for as much, which that one kind of bridges the gap there, since it was, commenting on what I liked in contrast to something that I didn't like. But I think the other thing, or one of the main things I didn't really care for, is how inconsistent they are with when Sonic uses his speed and his powers. I kind of forget if he has like a limitation or like how long he needs to refuel or like recharge his battery. My understanding is he doesn't, like, they don't really get into that. So it's strange when he moves really fast in some, like, just maybe one or two scenes, but then a lot of other scenes, if you were to move as fast as he does, where it's basically kind of like a still frame except he's moving around, like if he moved that fast in a lot more scenes, problems would be solved significantly faster and there'd be fewer of them because they don't cascade into other problems. So I think, I don't know, to be fair, if he just ran as fast as he runs and like in the scenes that he's the fastest, wouldn't really have a movie. But that was, I don't know, so that was just part of my brain I had to turn off and accept as being part of the movie. So overall, I think there was just a bit too much CGI, but I mean, that's kind of what you're going to get for this film. I think a lot of it looks pretty good, but there's definitely a few things, like I think there's one scene where Knuckles gets like some food spilled on him, and that actually looked pretty bad. But I don't know, I think it looks as good as it can for how much CGI there is. I just think there's a lot. So, I mean, that's what you're going to expect, though, if you've seen the trailer. It's nothing more than that. But what I will say is I'm sure glad that they redid the design on the original movie for Sonic compared to the first trailer that they released, where he didn't have as cartoon of eyes and just looked really, really weird. So I'm glad that they took the time to redo that, because I can I can only imagine what Knuckles and Tails would look like as versions of that original looking Sonic, and it would not look very good. And then just some other things that I didn't really care for in the movie. I think the government is shown as incompetent, as for whatever reason they typically are. I think this is a kids film, so that's, I guess, usually what they do. But yeah, I don't think government would ever be as like incompetent, and just like, I mean, some of the civilian characters ask the government about like, secret projects, and at first he doesn't answer, but then he tells them all about it. I'm like, that just wouldn't happen. Like, there's a thing called classified that you wouldn't share that information. But that's kind of a nitpick. Other things that I didn't really care for, I'm not a huge fan of Jim Carrey, especially his Carrey-isms, if you want to call it that. I understand that people in general enjoy them, but like silly, stupid humor is not what I appreciate. I appreciate a bit more of like the dry humor and irony and that sort of thing. But if you do like Jim Carrey and kind of his style of comedy, I think it's not as over the top as I've seen, but he obviously is going to be, he's the villain of this film, so you're going to get a lot of that, and if you enjoy it, then you'll probably enjoy the film a bit more than I did. And then kind of on that note, I thought that the humor just overall was pretty childish. So I think, yeah, kids would appreciate it a lot, but I didn't really care for the humor throughout the film. I think I chuckled maybe twice, to be fair. So it's not like I didn't laugh at any of the jokes, but there was just a couple, and then the rest just kind of fell flat on me. But there again, I think it's just kind of subjective with who the audience is, and at the end of the day, this isn't really a film that's geared towards me. So that kind of brings us to the end of the list of the things that I didn't care for about the film. So overall, I thought that this was just kind of a meh movie for me personally. I do think as a kids film though, it's a good movie. It's just that I'm not really into kids films at this point in my life. So I think my letter grade for this and my personal enjoyment would be a C, but I think grading it kind of objectively as a kids film, recognizing that I'm not its target audience, I think it's an A for a kids film. But that's a pretty big asterisk. Like I don't think kids films are gonna get, like in my book, they just don't get that high of rating. But if you're looking for a kids movie and you think, or if you like, especially if you like the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I think you'll like this one. But if you didn't really care for the first one and you're not really into kids movies, this probably isn't going to be all that entertaining for you, as it wasn't for me. But that said, I do think that this is a better movie than the original, and it's a worthy sequel to the original. And I think the main reason for that is just the inclusion of Tails and Knuckles, and just kind of broadening that scope and focusing more on those characters and less on the humans involved in the story, which I thought were the least interesting part. I do think that Knuckles steals the show, so I think that he elevates the movie quite a bit overall, and it was great of them to bring him in. So that does it for my review of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. If you've been able to see the film, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to smash the like button. It just helps me gauge what sort of movies you like me to cover here on the channel. Otherwise, with that, we'll conclude the review here, and thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.